Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
Next, and then from there, they start to distribute those funds to customers who are withdrawing. Now, as an investigator, if I'm following these funds and I see the exchange and I see the next, and then I see the next transaction is money leaving the exchange, my initial reaction is maybe I should keep following the funds because the suspects are withdrawing the money. But there's no guarantee that that transaction is tied to the one before it. Because once the money goes into the exchange, they can do with it whatever they want. It's theirs. So this is where the investigation stops, essentially, and you need to ask more information from the exchange. It's like the criminal running into the river, and you've got the dog, and it takes you right up to the river, but unless you know where the path is on the other side to follow, right, it's really hard to pick up that trail. The exchange acts as that river. There's a gatekeeper or something, right? And you just ask, hey, where did that guy get out on the other side? And it'll give you the transactions for that account. But there's no way to make that connection on the public blockchain. The criminals know this, so that's why they deposit things into exchanges. They also use their victims' identification to set up accounts without their knowledge. Because think about it, if you are creating a fake exchange, people are expecting to provide like IDs and all this stuff because that's what exchanges normally would do. So the fake exchanges have started to act just like regular exchanges because that makes people think that it's trustworthy. Right. Well, then they take that information and they go set up that information. Now they have their ID, they have a selfie, they have all this stuff that they can use. They go set up accounts on other exchanges in other countries, and then they run the money through those accounts. So when law enforcement goes and looks them up, they find a grandma and they're like, wait a minute. I don't think that this grandma is actually running the scam.
Right.
So then you don't really have any information about the person who's doing the movement, but now you have more information about the flow of funds, which you can then try to follow again. But you can see now, just from this example, how tricky and difficult it can be to follow this activity. And there's things that they change blockchains. There's tools that you can go from Bitcoin blockchain to the Ethereum blockchain, and now you're tracing it on a whole different blockchain. And the complexity that these criminals are using, they're using bots sometimes. They're using what are called mixer services to mix their coins or tokens with a whole bunch of other people who are doing the same thing, so you can't tell when it's being withdrawn or by whom. So it gets pretty complicated, and but man, it sure is interesting and fun to a degree. I mean, it's still work, but the knowledge that you gain, the feeling that you get by helping people, right? Because a lot of times the people come to you and they are just absolutely distraught, like they just realized that they lost their entire life savings.
It's true. It's absolutely true. And that's a rough thing for somebody to be dealing with. And by the time they get to you, they're in a really rough place. So that's one of the things that what you do with CoinStructive is so valuable, because it gives people a solution and potential hope, right, that they didn't have before they got a chance to talk to you.
And one of the big problems is there's been a lot of recovery scam companies out there pretending to do what CoinStructive does. The FBI recently took down one of the biggest scam recovery companies. They were the #1 advertiser on Google. Google was letting them advertise. So you can imagine if you see an ad on Google for, oh, I lost my crypto, how do I get my crypto back? and the number one advertiser, you're going to think it's legit. Like, why would Google allow scammers to advertise?
Right. Yeah.
They were for a very long time.
We're learning that they're not that discerning, you know.
Not always. They shut down like legitimate business advertising all the time.
Yeah.
For crypto related stuff. But when it came to these scams, they were pretty prevalent, and people, they were charging $10,000 up front to get started. I've rarely ever charged $10,000 in total for a case. Most of our cases are between 1,500 to $3,000, and that includes what we call an initial analysis, as well as the forensic report. And why I designed the process this way is because when I first started doing the work, it didn't make sense to me to, first of all, charge people to even do investigations, because everybody, like, the first rule in crypto you're taught is once you send crypto, it's irreversible. So there's nothing you can do to get it back. All you can do is watch it. But then I started to think about, okay, well, how would you get it back? Oh, a centralized exchange. I make a deposit, you contact the exchange. If there's funds in the wallet, they freeze them. Law enforcement can seize them, right? They can be returned to the victims. So there is a path. Doesn't always work, but there are opportunities and options for folks. So when I started to realize this, I was like, okay, well, maybe there's ways to actually to help people. And so the initial analysis, because of like these other firms, they would just say, hey, give us $5,000, give us 8, 10 grand, and we'll generate a report for you. But they don't know what the data is going to be once they get started. It can be super simple and 3 or 4 hops right to an exchange, still charging you the full amount. And I thought of it should be more like car repair. Oh, you're like, oh, I hate car repair. Mechanics suck, right? Like everybody. But if you knew that there was some leak or some noise, right, in your car, and you took your car to the mechanic, and the mechanic looked at it from the outside and was like, transmission, pretty sure that's transmission. It's going to be $6,000. You're going to be like, hold on a second. You didn't even look under the hood. How do you know? I'm going to go down the street, get a second opinion.
Right.
Crypto blockchain forensics is so new. People don't know what kind of questions to ask. They don't know how to get it. They don't even know they don't even think about getting a second opinion. And then when they do get the information back, they don't really have a way to verify it. Even though the information is public, they just don't verify a lot of times. They just take the word of the experts that they hired and are paying a lot of money to do. But if you come back to a person and you say, hey, look, I need an hour, I need 2 hours based on how big your case is. I got to look. I got to see how bad it is. I got to dig around under the hood, right? Because if the leak is coming from the windshield wiper housing and not the transmission,
right,
that's a like $300-400 job, right? An hour of labor and the part costs $160.
That's way different than 6,000.
Right. But you don't know that until you dig around and look. So these companies that were charging astronomical amounts, regardless of how much work it was going to be, never sat with me well, because they weren't trying to help people.
Right.
They're trying to make money.
Yeah.
I basically ran, the only way CoinStructive was actually able to survive doing investigation work is that we have another business line where we do compliance, financial compliance as a service. Right. So I'm actually a financial compliance, chief compliance officer for several crypto financial institutions in the industry.
Wow.
Right.
Cool.
So, which means I have a responsibility at the federal level to FinCEN, which is part of the Treasury Department, for reporting suspicious activity and certain types of transactions, large amounts, and just making sure that the companies are doing all the things that they're supposed to be doing. Otherwise, they can get in trouble, fined, shut down. And I, as a compliance officer, am personally liable. So I'm very incentivized to make sure that the things they're doing are correct.
Sure.
And the reason I even got into that side of the work was back in 2017, I kind of skipped over, I started a Bitcoin ATM company.
Okay.
So I was running CoinStructive. I got together with 3 other people. We started a Bitcoin ATM company.
Mhm.
After about a year, I realized that the guy who put the money in was basically the ultimate decision maker, and that the other 3 of us didn't really have much say, even though we were supposed to be equal partners. So I left. I was like, this is not going anywhere.
Yeah, I'm not gonna
But
lie.
I used my skills as the chief compliance officer eventually to open up a service offering to help other companies do the same thing. And partly because there was a gentleman in San Diego who was running an unlicensed Bitcoin exchange, peer to peer. He would meet people in person and he would take money and he would give them Bitcoin, but he wasn't registered with the Treasury Department, FinCEN, and he didn't have any compliance policies, and he wasn't doing what they call KYC, which is like know your customer, so asking for an ID or just stuff to prove like source of funds. Turns out one of his clients got rolled up into a drug investigation, was probably a drug dealer or part of a drug thing. Well, they said, well, where are you getting your Bitcoin from? You're taking the cash and where are you going? Oh, I'm buying Bitcoin. Okay, well, who are you buying Bitcoin from? Oh, this guy, right? Then he gets rolled up into the investigation. He ends up going to jail for 3 years. I think he spent his 21st birthday in jail. And if he had a little bit of guidance, could have been avoided. So that's when I realized, okay, I can also help people, right, run a successful business and avoid the pitfalls of this industry. Because once you're tagged for something like that, you can't work in the financial industry ever again.
Right.
So if you're like, oh, well, I'll just deal with this and when I get out, then I can do this, or I have this idea for, nope, not happening. You got to like find a different industry almost. Sometimes you can't even work with computers depending on like what you did, right? So those 2 things, right? The stability of a compliance department that customers are paying you every month, when investigations are, some months they're big, some months they're small, some months they're not at all, and you don't ever have repeat customers, or hopefully, in investigations, right? It's all one-time stuff. So it's not a very strong business model until recently, which is, and if you don't mind, I'm going to keep going.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
The where we've really been finding success lately is family law,
Mhm.
because over time, crypto has become more mainstream.
Mhm.
People are still getting divorced at the exact same rates they were 10 years ago, right? 20 years ago, or maybe a little bit more now even, or whatever it is, but it's like still 40 or 50%, whatever the number is, but more people have crypto. So now when they get divorced, they're like, I know my spouse was talking about Bitcoin. He even showed me a wallet one time, or she showed me a wallet one time, but I don't know how much is there.
Right.
So now we're doing expert witness work,
Yeah.
working with attorneys and divorce cases. And I had an attorney tell me 2 weeks ago, I think I might want to leave my practice and come work for you because you're in such a great position right now, because there's not a lot of people that are doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And it's just starting to blossom. So I really feel like you said, where are you going to be in the future? That's our new initiative, is to really hone in on these family law offices and work with them to support all of their clients, which now is a recurring customer,
Yeah.
because the law firms bring you clients
Oh, sure.
continually, right? So
Yeah.
now all of a sudden investigations not being a regular thing, because starting to become a regular thing, and that's affording us a lot of other opportunities as well. So
And those
uh,
attorneys know people that need forensic work done that's not divorce related, right? They just need, they just need
sometimes,
forensic work done, right? So I mean, it's a whole blossoming thing that could work out really well. This is episode 225 that we're doing for our podcast, and one of the most popular episodes we have is with an estate attorney out of Coachella Valley,
mm,
and he has a fascinating life story. And I think that's a big reason why, besides the fact that he's pretty high profile, I think that's a big reason why it's one of the most popular episodes we have. So I'll make sure that I make the introduction so that so you guys can work with them. So talk about Crypto Recovery Alliance for a second. That's something that is, I think you said, a nonprofit that you're working on, that you're building. Talk about what that looks like.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. So from almost the first day that I started doing investigation work at CoinStructive, there's always been this feeling of helping victims who can't afford the help, right? But when you're running a business, if I just took cases pro bono all the time, I would be out of business already.
Right.
So I had to come up with something where I can still provide value and get paid, but we can do it at a level that doesn't feel like we're ripping people off, and that we're providing actual value. So I basically ran the investigations department almost like a nonprofit itself. Every year I look, excuse me, and it would seem like it's kind of breaking even in that department, right? By the cost of the people, the tools, and everything, like advertising for a while. It was kind of just a null. And that was fine with me because I felt like we were doing good. We were building momentum and we were helping people, and we were applying the things that we learned on the compliance side to the investigation side. Oh, and vice versa. Because when you're doing compliance work, you don't get people telling you what their motivation is or why they're doing the thing. You just see something suspicious. But when you're working with victims, they tell you everything.
Yeah.
So now you know the whole backstory of how they were duped into doing what they were doing. You can see those patterns. You know what questions to ask on the compliance side. So holistically, it's made CoinStructive stronger by doing both things at the same time. But so not being able to provide free services more regularly was something that was always in the back of my head and was always bothering me. And I'd worked with an attorney for a while, and every time I would like, let's get this thing going. It was like, victims of financial crimes are not a charitable or a charitable group. And so there was I was always getting pushback, and I would come up with a solution, and then I was pushback, and it was so. After enough roadblocks, I decided to go with some different attorneys. And now the Crypto Recovery Alliance is an active entity. We're working on our nonprofit status, and we're building the infrastructure right now. And I hope that in 2025, January 2025, we'll start taking actual victim cases. And victims who qualify financially will not have to pay for blockchain forensic services. So you'll have to meet a certain threshold to show financial hardship, because we know we don't want the $1 million loss guy coming in and saying, "Oh, I really need these services. I lost $1 million. I'm broke, and I might have to sell my second house." Like, hold on. That's not the same problem as somebody who lost $75,000,
Right.
is on a fixed income, is 73 years old and doesn't know what they're going to do because they don't have any money now.
Right.
So the other two components, right, that are what are the thing that resonate the most with me, because doing the investigation work, that's almost a carbon copy of what CoinStructive does. We just won't charge. The other two things that I'm really excited about are the low to no cost access to mental health care and the education, the preventative education, or in education in general, which both of those things will have access to anybody, not just the people who are qualified for the forensic services. Because what I really want people to do is to take back that word recovery on that crypto recovery part, because recovery is not just about getting your money back. People think, oh, I get my money back, it's going to fix all the problems, my wife won't be mad or my husband won't be mad. No, the trust is already broken. Things have already been set in motion. Getting the money back might make you feel a little bit better, but you still have to repair the damage. You still have to work through the trauma of what you've experienced. It doesn't just happen overnight. People get suicidal. right? Because they feel like their life has ended because they lost all of their money. Their family is mad at them. Their performance at work has gone down. So now they're getting it from all sides, and the pressure can be immense. And people do take their own lives. So if we can provide access to mental health care services that are affordable or no cost, as well as preventative education so people can realize when they're being targeted or being re-victimized. Because once you're a victim, you go on a scam like victim list, and that list gets circulated amongst all scammers, and they will target you forever because they know they can get money out of you.
Yeah, you're an easy
And it's
mark.
not the same scammers,
Yeah.
but right. So the goal, right? No cost blockchain forensics, low, no cost mental health care access, and preventative education to help people, becoming a victim again. Because you can't prevent people from being victims, because most people don't put the energy into understanding what the scams or the techniques that people use or employ to get the victim to do what they want until after. But what we need them to realize is that they should not be victimized ever again. Right. And that's where I think this industry, the crypto industry, can do a lot better, because right now, a lot of time the path for the victim is go to the police. Sorry, you took the money off of our exchange. Sorry, you pulled the money out of our non-custodial crypto wallet and sent it to the scammer, but we don't have any way to get it back. We have no control over that. That was something that you did. So go to the police. Right? And then they go to the police, and most of the police stations are like, we don't even have the tools to do crypto forensics. So go to the feds. And you go to the FBI or Secret Service, and they go, 50 grand, man. Like we don't look at anything under $1 million right now. So now the victim is thrust back into I just went through the path that I thought I was supposed to go, and I got no help. Where do I turn? They turn to the internet, and then they find recovery scam companies. Then they fall victim again. By the time they get to us, they don't trust anybody. They don't want to pay anything, right? So that's this vicious cycle that ends up happening in crypto to victims.
Will you do me a favor? Once you have Crypto Recovery Alliance up and running, will you come back on and we'll promote it?
Absolutely.
That'd be awesome. It'd be great to have you. Chris, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been a lot of fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed every second of it.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it as well, and I hope your listeners get something out of it.
They will, I promise you. So CoinStructive.com, right, to reach out to you, and we'll have you back to talk about Crypto Recovery Alliance once you're up and running.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Mike.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.